scary to be up here. But the song that we sang just before was really kind of fitting. It's like, my words fall short. I have nothing new, but I hope that you can hear what God is doing in my life. And I want to thank Hannah for encouraging me. She said she just loved hearing stories. So here goes. Growing up in a Christian family makes for faith stories that are kind of predictable and not very sensational. But from the reading and knowledge I've gained over some years, I think that is actually the way God meant His love to be passed on in families. Anyway, I grew up in a family where my parents really loved the Lord, and they thought it was important to tell others about Jesus. And so I grew up in Paraguay as a missionary kid. It was a great life. Innocence, carefree, playing and enjoying life. At around the age of 8, I became aware that God was at work in my life. I realized that I needed Jesus to get rid of my sins so I could go to heaven. I actually understand this a little bit differently now, but that is how I was taught. I asked Jesus into my life at that point. I remember a weight dropping from my shoulders and a new joy in my heart. That was an experience I've never forgotten. But of course, the Christian life is much more than asking Jesus into your heart. When I was a teenager, our family moved back to Canada. I got baptized, and after I graduated from high school, I went to Steinbach Bible College for 2 years. It was here that I met a very interesting and fun young man named Randy. After we got married, we lived in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. During all these years, I almost always spent some part of the day reading the Bible and praying. And yet, even though I disciplined myself to be faithful, I somehow didn't have the joy or the vitality of a good relationship with God. God gave us 2 beautiful little girls, and Randy had a good job. We were involved in our local church. And then a letter came out of the blue, but probably it was the Lord calling us, and that changed our lives forever. We were asked by this church to consider moving to Elmer, Ontario, and being youth pastors in the Mount Salem EMC church. There was little doubt in our minds that this was God's call on our lives. In 6 months, we packed up and moved our little family to Elmer, Ontario, and started a new life. The church family welcomed us with open arms, and we soon were immersed in life at the Mount Salem EMC. We had 2 more children, a boy and a girl, and that completed our family. Struggles and hurts are part of life. Unfortunately, when you're involved in a church family, you usually get hurt. Where there are people, life is messy. We can see the messiness as part of our training to learn to love Jesus. So it's not a secret that this church has had struggles. All churches do, and probably will continue to have struggles. So we found ourselves at the center of one of these struggles. We were blamed for the struggle, and indeed, we were partly to blame. We decided to leave this church when it seemed that things were getting worse instead of better. We grieved for our church family here for a long time. In this time, God taught me about forgiveness and moving on. Many of my best friends still attend this church. but I got to know new ones as we began to attend a church nearby. It was during this time that I was invited to be part of a spiritual friendship group. 2 other wonderful women who wanted a deeper relationship with the Lord and accountability in walking in their faith asked me to join them. This group has become one of the biggest influences in my journey with Jesus. We meet to this day, and we continue to encourage each other in walking our journey with Jesus. What a beautiful experience to have friends who stick with you even when you show them who you really are. This is also one of my saddest times with this group. Anita Dyke is one of the people who is part of this group, and we've walked with her, and we are walking with her even through this really dark time in her life. Then we became part of a church plant called Grace Community Church, which had joys and struggles all its own. What an amazing experience, just the friendships that we were able to forge, and just the very close community that came from that experience. After 15 years, just before COVID happened, we closed the doors, and since then we've attended a few different churches. However, Mount Salem again embraced us. Thank you. I believe forgiveness and reconciliation has also been worked on by many of you in this congregation. Since Grace Community Church closed, we have not been involved in church in a formal ministry role. This has given us some space from being caught up in such an all-encompassing way of serving. And when you're less busy, things often become clearer. I noticed that I felt guilty for not being busy at church. I began to realize that I had been drawing my meaning and identity from the work I was doing at church, rather than from being God's child, loved and valued for who I am, not for what I do. Over the past 2 years, I've been studying the art of spiritual direction. For those who may not be familiar, spiritual direction is a practice where you accompany someone on their spiritual journey, listening to them and to the Holy Spirit, paying attention to what God is doing in their life. Through this course and through receiving spiritual direction myself, I've learned a great deal about both God and myself. It became clear to me that I was often doing things out of duty rather than from a place of love and identity rooted in Christ. I was doing lots of right things, but mostly because it seemed like that was how you were supposed to walk the Christian life. Like I mentioned before, I didn't find joy in living this way, but I didn't understand why not. The strange thing is, if you had asked me how things were going, like how my Christian walk was, I would have said, great. Somehow God was able to get through my blindness, doing things out of duty instead of love, and not realizing there was a more abundant life to live. Getting to know Jesus in a deeper way and his incredible love for me in a new and deeper way has brought joy into my walk with him. I'm learning that the Christian life isn't about performance, but about relationship. And truth be told, I've always known this, but somehow you get caught up in the performance things in little ways, and I was reminded again about how important relationship is. Another thing I've come to see is how sacred the inner secret place of our hearts really is. The space where our thoughts and desires are processed, where decisions are made and where we shape how we feel about ourselves and others. Most of us tend to avoid that space because it can be quite uncomfortable. We stay busy or distract ourselves to keep from being too honest with what's inside. But that space is sacred because it's exactly where God wants to meet us, right there in the middle of our thoughts and feelings. He wants to show us his love, help us sort through what's going on, and build a relationship with us there. I want to learn how to abide in that space with God more and more. Becoming a member of this church body, again, is a step of obedience and a way to express my commitment to the body of Christ. I want to joyfully be part of this community of believers that reflects Jesus' love to one another and to the world. Thank you.
Well, I knew that was going to happen. You were going to find out what incredibly wonderful wife I married. I'm not only nervous, I just want to give you a little heads up. Sharing your story is a bit vulnerable. And so if I'm a little bit emotional at times, I hope you're comfortable with that. You're okay. You're okay. Thank you, Juanita, because some of this, my memories take me back to a time, and it helps me to look at my whole journey, and it's been good. So just don't. Sometimes you just get emotional. I'm not really that kind of a guy, so I don't usually cry. So just that's not me. That's something else happening there. Okay, so let me start. I did honestly ask for 20 minutes. I hope I can do it in 20 minutes. And part of the reason is I can't tell you my whole story. Of course I can't. I've lived more than 30 years already. And there's a lot of memories that have been very influential and they stick out, and I can't tell you them all. So what I did is I went off of Will's series of messages that he did. The road, and that one when he told about those songs that talked about the road, I'm going, Will, every road goes home. You have to have home. So I wanted to tell you my story with a theme, just that way, so that it has some continuity, and that way I could leave out stories and I could include stories. So let me start this way. I could take the word testimony and maybe convince you that I'm a Jesus follower in a couple of minutes, and I might even convince you that Gloria and I fit in with this specific chapter of Jesus followers that you are here, but I don't think that's how this is supposed to be. So I'd like to tell you my story with a theme, or you might say a thread, but it's not a thread. It's a cable that has been pulling me through it all along, and it's the theme of home. And I think I'm the right guy for this, for home, and you'll see why, because I have such a strong sense of home. My experience of home is more than a place. It's more than a theology of place. It includes people, it includes things. And God has been directly involved in my story, as he has been in yours throughout your life. So I trust that you'll be able to see it, but I'd like you to do more. I'd like you to follow with me through it. Memories are actually quite interesting things. It's interesting how I can take one memory and I hold it up and I look at it one way, and it looks like something. And another time in my life, I take that same memory and I hold it up, and it looks totally different. And it might even evoke a totally different emotion. And what's interesting about those same memories is I can share them, and I have brothers and a sister, and they say, that was horrible. I'm going, what are you talking about? That was awesome. It was amazing. The very same memory can do that kind of a thing to a person. And I'm going to hold up some memories for you this morning. So I was born at a very young age to a young couple, John and Betty Fehr of Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada. And that word has been stuck out to you before. Gloria said that we were married there. This is important. I was told that this happened. I don't remember that part of it at all. But I had one older brother, Darcy. He was 2 years older than me. And I had two younger brothers, Greg and Gord. And finally, a sister, Kimberly, who was 16 and a half years younger than me. Early in my life, my dad delivered milk for the Co-op Creamery. But he always had a passion and a love for farming. He always owned land. I always remember him owning land. And his passion ran extremely deep. He told me the story that when he was 6 years old, he had been driving tractor and tears were streaming down his face because of the joy that he felt for farming. He was that happy. In my early years there, we actually didn't live on the farm. We lived just north of the number 1 highway in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. This still would have been considered part of the city, but it was just north of the number 1 highway. There's 4 lanes to cross the number 1 highway, and I would cross those as a grade 1er and as a grade 2er. Every day to school and every day back. I know our culture would frown on that quite a bit, and somehow I made it through. Nobody hit me, and I made it. By tradition, my dad was a Sommerfelder. My mom was an Entz, so she had a Mennonite roots, but somehow Grandpa Entz had bought into the JW faith, and my mom even handed out tracts as a Jehovah's Witness. She had moved on from there by the time they were married. They became Christians through an EMC church and started going to an EMC church when I was 5. My brother became a Christian right away, but I held out for a year until I was 6. A whole year. I'd been hearing these messages of Christ's imminent return with a dispensational view of how the end would all play out. And so here's my story of coming to Jesus. My brother and I would walk about a mile to school every day and a mile back across the 4 lanes of the number 1 highway. And the one day, in my mind, there was always somebody that would always be at home. And Darce and I would actually walk together. But this one day, there was nobody at home when I got there. Darce wasn't there, Mom wasn't there, and Dad wasn't there. And this never happened. In all of my 6 years of long life, I waited. No one was coming home, and I got scared. I thought that the rapture had happened. And I knelt down beside a dishwasher. We had a portable dishwasher. And I prayed. I said, God, if you haven't come yet, I will give you my life. Shortly thereafter, Darce came home, and then Mom came home, and finally Dad came home. Crisis averted. The only thing was that God was serious about my commitment, and so was I. And I think you could say that would be the end of the story, but that was where home was at that time in my life till I was 9 years old, just north of the number 1 highway in Swift Current. I have to give you a sneak story about my mom because home is about people as well as place. And it happened in that early version of home behind the Skyline Hotel north of the number 1 Swift Current, Saskatchewan. And these are memories that really impacted me. And this version hit me pretty hard. My brother Gordy was a baby, and we didn't have all the fancy diaper stuff that's around today. Mom used diaper pins, cloth diapers, and she washed the diapers, cleaning out the stuff. On one occasion, she had changed Gordy's diaper, and she had put it under the crib, and she asked me to take it out. I didn't. What ensued was I left, and somehow Gordy got out of the crib, and he was playing in the dirty diaper, smearing it everywhere on himself and everywhere. And it was not pretty, and it was gross. And Mom was so angry. After the smoke had cleared, although it wasn't literally smoke, and I was probably 8 at this time, this was a most earth-shattering event. Mom called me over, and she got down on her knees in front of me. And she apologized to me. For me, this memory was something else. It struck me in my whole life. I deserved a spanking, and what I got was asking me to forgive her. And that has stuck with me. You need to know that I'm not going to tell much about my mom because my dad was the one who was most influential. And because I worked with him, and somehow dads and sons do that kind of thing. But I had to give you that version of Mom. So during the winter of 72, Dad bought the farm, a full section, 4 quarters, 640 acres in one parcel. And that place would be the place that would be home. I would call it home. And everything else after that would be compared with that home. It would become so important to me, 6 miles south, 1 mile west of Swift Current, Saskatchewan, off the number 4 highway. We would finally move there July 4th, 1972. Listen, you have to have this memory, because my dad's excitement was palpable, and it seeped into every pore of us. We caught it. You see, Swift Current, Regina, and Saskatoon form what is known as the Palliser Triangle in Saskatchewan. And my dad taught me that the best 4 quarters in all of the world were actually right there, just south of Swift Current, Saskatchewan. And that's where we lived. That day, in 1972, it was still winter, very, very cold. Dad loaded up me and Darcy in the pickup, the 67 Ford, and drove us out to the farm. The house was red brick, no insulation. It was abandoned, but to Dad, it was a castle, and I remember how cold it was and how cold we were. But Dad was not deterred the least. We went into the house, and there was a big grate on the floor, and you could see straight down into the basement. There was no ducting. But Dad went into the basement, and he built a fire, and I remember feeling the heat come up through the grate. And I knew at a moment that somehow something had happened, and we were home. This was home. I remember the heat. I can still almost feel the heat wafting up through the grate. That memory cemented in my mind what kind of a place this was going to be. It was probably a place of warmth, security, anticipation of doing life. And from there is why it sticks out. It was Dad's vibrant love for that place that struck me. It was contagious. You couldn't help but being drawn into his dream. I'm going to skip the work ethic, the 90 pigs in the barn that we shoveled out every day. Mark Habscheid, who played hockey for the Edmonton Oilers and played for the Minnesota North Stars, rode the bus with us. And the arguments that happened in the bus, who worked the hardest. And Franz and Trev down the road said, oh no, they worked the hardest. And Mark Habscheid chimed in and says, oh no, everybody knows the Fehr boys work harder than anybody. And I'm going, oh yeah, baby, there's a work ethic there. That's us. That next summer, I remember Dad buying us a 70 Honda trail bike for me and Darce, because we shoveled manure in that big barn, the big hip roof barn that was open with 90 hogs. We did it all the time. We milked cows, we shoveled manure. But I have to share this memory because this is the next one that is really, for me, my mind goes back there all the time. It's if you think of a happy place, a safe place, a good place. One day before chores, I took off down the road with the 70 Honda Trail. I went south. I did not go south. I went west towards Swift Current, back towards Swift Current. And I went out into the open prairie between our place and Swift Current. And there's a railway trestle that's out there. The sun was high, a couple of clouds in the sky floating along, a light breeze blowing. And I got off the trail bike, and I just sat down in the open prairie in the pasture. And I can remember watching the trestle, and I thought, there isn't a more beautiful place in the entire world. And I don't know how long I sat there, but it was as if God had come and sat down beside me. And some of you who have this idea that, oh, did he say something to you? No, he didn't say anything at all. He didn't need to say anything at all. This was absolutely the best place in the entire world. I don't know how long I sat there. But I go back there often and I can feel the breeze. I see the trestle. I see the beautiful hills. It's absolutely amazing. And God was there. If God lived anywhere on earth, it had to be right there at that time. I went to high school, Swift Current Comprehensive High. I played football. I wrestled. I graduated from high school in 82. Darce, my older brother, had a hankering for trucking, and Dad bought an 83 Kenworth, which started us off on a different road. I hiked off to Bible college, as Gloria has talked about, that fall, and Dad paid for my first year of Bible college. How do you like that? My first roommate was Rick Bueller. Second semester was Gord Penner, and continued from there. We chose each other. Go figure. Gord Penner. What was I? At Bible college, they nicknamed me Homer because of my strong, competitive nature. This is Manitoba. I come from Saskatchewan. Are you kidding me? We clashed. And Saskatchewan is the best. That was the best place. And they called me Homer because I would always stick up for my home. I couldn't understand how anybody would think other than that. And it was there that I met this absolutely amazing girl that I thought I should pursue a relationship with. But it took me a long time. I'm a slow learner. It happened actually in one of Archie Penner's theology classes, of all places. You know, if you think my theology was bad when I was 6 and I thought Christ had returned, this whole idea, well, here it was theology class, and there was Gloria. And for the first time, I looked, and she had a blue striped t-shirt, button-up shirt on, and her collar was turned up. I was done. It may have taken me a while. After 3 years, we finally agreed that we should pursue life together, and we were finally married. I had purchased a quarter of land of my own and 40 acres from my uncle, or I guess Dad's uncle. He had passed away. It was his son already. And so I was excited about doing life with Gloria. It was only 3 miles from where home had been, and it would be different. We'd build our own home. But home was really where we wanted to be. Everything else was still always compared to 6 miles south, 1 mile west of Swift Current, 19, 14, 13 west of the 3rd meridian, those of you who know farm locations. It's that deeply implanted in me. After we were married, Gloria and I moved to the farm. I had bought a brand new 91 T600 Kenworth. I got a job with Federated Co-op hauling groceries. And it was during those 3 years that God actually changed me. In the truck, more than at Bible college, I had time. I had been studying 1 Corinthians. Like, this is Saskatchewan, so the roads, there's no traffic. You're okay, all right? You can read, and you can learn, and you don't have to watch. Like, that's Saskatchewan. Those of you who were here for my first Testimonies some 30-odd years ago when I gave it, I think I might have said that then too. But what I was doing in teaching 1 Corinthians, I had my study notes beside me. I had a couple texts. Not only that, but I memorized during those years. I memorized the entire book of Philippians. I memorized the entire book of James. And I could recite them from beginning to end, not missing a word. That was one of my prides. And you can't do that without having God's word actually start to come into you and change you. It might be a discipline, but there's stuff about those words that started to change me. And so it was no surprise to me and Gloria when we received that letter from Mount Salem asking us to be youth pastors. How could we say no? The only thing was, I had a farm, I had trucking, I had a goal that I would farm with Dad in 5 years. So we went with that understanding. We'd come to Mount Salem, youth pastor for 5 years, move back and I'd farm with Dad and do that for my career. And you can see God still lived 6 miles south, 1 mile west on Swift Current, Saskatchewan. And maybe you living here in Ontario haven't ever realized the dissension between the East and the West. We felt it out coming from the West. We did not like the East. This is where everything bad happened and we were moving there. And yet, we were convinced that this is where home would take us for the next 5 years. Although Gloria wasn't quite convinced of that. Now, the new youth group that we came to here was really our new family and really became a home that was so integral to who we are. And what's interesting is a lot of you were our youth. And a lot of you are probably the kids of the youth, even grandchildren of the youth. Like, that had to be the best job, the most amazing time. We moved into a house that Arnold and Catherine alone had built. We dove into youth ministry. And I think Pete Lowen has come to realize that there is a silent R in Cheboygan. Oh, you had to be there. That was one of our youth trips. Ask Pete about it. It's so funny. We had a Gurk. And we, Sue, oh my goodness. You guys were the best. How could we not want to come home here to you to make this home? I don't know why. You're still our home. By this time, okay, so from then, Jordan and Kaylee were born in Ontario. We had moved to Pete and Mary Froze's place in Mount Salem. We bought the place. And you'd say we might have become Ontarians, but I would still say my home was still 6 miles south, 1 mile west. And I would fix this whole Ontario thing when I got back to Saskatchewan. Well, I was young and I still knew everything, so church hurt was inevitable. You can laugh. Because it's true, that's the arrogant, that's some of the nature that I had to struggle with my whole life. After 6 years, we left the church. Gloria didn't want to move home, and so I went back to school. I spent the next 5 years, driving truck, commuting to Tyndale, and finally graduating. And it seems it's always taken me a little longer to catch on, and that's why the 5 years I need. Anybody else does their MDiv in 3. I do 5. Hey, takes me a little longer. That's all right. Anyway, when I finally realized I wanted to commit to doing education and theology, I remember asking Dr. Yao-Man Su, one of my key profs, if the wide open prairies of 6 miles south and 1 mile west had any impact on my education. Oh, he said, you have no idea. He was adamant that I would need to reflect on the depth and the degree to which it had shaped and molded me. We planted Grace Community Church, and those people became our nice, new, close, tight-knit family. And then we bought the 4.75 acres on Hacienda Road, not far from Mount Salem. And I compared that purchase to that cold day back when Dad and Darce took me to the old house. We had not purchased this place yet, but I wanted this place on Hacienda so badly. I remember taking Tiffany and Brittany, who were little, on bikes. We biked down the road over to there, and we went into the ditch, into the ravine, and we'd watch. And they caught home from me. They caught my vision, my dream for that place. And the memories that we would build in that place were incomparable. The kids felt, actually, when we built our new place now, as we severed the property, they felt that we were abandoning something that was dear to them. I could understand. Meanwhile, I wasn't giving Grace Community the attention, the wisdom, the care that she needed to sustain the growth that had been taking place. And then, just before COVID, we closed the doors to Grace Community. We were all tired, close, dear friends. I don't think I realized the impact that was going to have on me there. Somewhere in the back of my mind, there was a back door. I could always go home. And this is the hard part. Well, Mom has gotten old. Dad and Darce are gone. The land, the farm is still there. The pig barn that we built is a heap of rubble. The old hip roof barn is gone, where I milk cows, driving tractor, seeding. I can never go home again. It's gone, and yet that's not true. You see, I have deep, you can feel sort of the deep emotions I have for that place, for that time. Let me tell you this. For a lack of better term, I'm going to use the term residual memory. I don't think my incredible, deep-seated emotions come from just that place. I think they go further back to another home. I really do. And you say, Randy, do you believe in the pre-existent Randy? Oh, no, I'm not talking about a pre-existent Randy. I'm talking about a pre-existent home that my memory has no knowledge of. But deep within my heart, I think it goes back to that home that Jesus has made, that is that good, where the Father takes on that image of perfection and wonder and glory and beauty that I experienced not only in the field that day, by the railroad trestle, that I've experienced many times as I've developed my spiritual disciplines, as I look out the window. It's interesting, Gord Penner, people don't know. Some people aren't good with compliments, and Gord isn't one of them. But I shouldn't say that about him. But he came to our place. He'd never been in our house, and he just looked out the window. He says, "Nice view." And he's gone. I'm going, "Nice view? This is where I meet with God every morning. Are you kidding me?" But that's okay. He didn't understand. That same thing, that home, I'm not talking about the pre-existent. I'm talking about a memory that has a knowledge of a relationship, of a place with God. Listen, Jesus experienced the same thing. Do you ever look in the Gospels when you read the story of Jesus' transfiguration in Luke 9? Do you know what happened there? For a moment, Jesus went home again. He was talking with his close relationships with Moses and Elijah, and Peter doesn't know how to work with this emotional feeling, and he's going, "Oh, what should we do? Maybe build a structure. We could live here. Could be." Jesus is going, "You don't quite understand, do you, Peter?" And Peter would at some point know that feeling of home. Will talked about a table. And I think really my memory that's residual of going back beyond Saskatchewan, it's not 6 miles south. It's the relationship with Jesus. That's what's really home. Will quoted all those songs with Rhodes, and I could feel home tugging at my heart again. And somehow it goes to Swift Current, but it goes way back. It goes further to my home with my Father, the one who loves me. And then there's the table. Every time that we sit down at the table, it's a piece of home. That's what communion is. It's a piece of home. I eat with you, and Jesus is there. The Father sits down again with us and shares his heart, his love. And so, in closing, Gloria and I would like, again, to make you in this place home again. And we'll continue our journey with you. We'll do life. And maybe I'm a little older than some of you, maybe not most, but yeah, we're getting a little closer, and the feel of home, it draws us closer. And you need to be part of our homes, I think. That's what our desire is. Thank you.